Hi everyone, my name is Syakira binti Muhammad Sharif. I'm from School of Educational Studies, University, Science Malaysia, and I'm taking course Arts with Education, and I'm majoring in Geography and minoring in History. Let's start it. There is 3 learning theory that I've learned in my course. The first one is Cognitivism theory. The second is Behaviorism theory. And the third is Constructive theory. I want to choose Behaviorism theory to describe this theory today. Behaviorism equates learning with changes in either the form or frequency of observable performance. Learning is accomplished when a proper response is demonstrated following the presentation of a specific environmental stimulus. Behaviorism also is new behaviors or changes in behaviors that acquired through association between stimulus and responses. For example, when presented with a math flashcard showing the equation 2 plus 4, the learner will always reply the answer is 6. The equation is the stimulus and the proper answer is the associated responses. The key elements are the stimulus, the responses, and the association between the two. Of primary concern is how the association between the stimulus and responses is made, strengthened, and maintained. Milton Berger, 2001, said, behaviorism is what people say and do. Well, in this theory, Ivan Pavlov, during the 1980s, Ivan Pavlov is a Russian psychologist researching salivation in dogs in responses to being fed. He inserted a small test tube into the cheek of each dog to measure the saliva when the dogs were fed with the powder made from meat. Discovered that any object or event which the dogs learn to associate with food, such as the lab assistant, would trigger the same response. He realized that he had an important scientific discovery. Accordingly, he devoted the rest of his career to studying the type of learning. Okay. In this theory, Pavlov believed that a dog does not need to learn. For example, dogs don't learn to salivate whenever they see food. This reflects hardwired to the dog. In behaviorist terms, food is an unconditioned stimulus and salivation is unconditioned response. For example, a stimulus response connection that required no learning. Pavlov used a metronome as his neutral stimulus. By itself, the metronome did not elicit a response from the dogs. Next, Pavlov began the conditioning procedure whereby the clicking metronome was introduced just before he gave food to his dogs. After a number of repeats of his procedure, he presented the metronome on its own. As you might expect, the sound of the clicking metronome is on its own now caused an increase in salivation. So the dog had learned an association between the metronome and the food, and a new behavior had been learned. Because these responses was learned or conditioned, it is called conditioned response and also known as a Pavlovian response. The neutral stimulus has become a conditioned stimulus. Pavlov found that for association to be made, the two stimuli had to be presented. Stimuli had to be presented together in time, such as Bell. He called this the law of temporal contiguity. If the time between the conditioned stimulus, which is Bell, and unconditioned stimulus, which is food, is too great, then learning will not occur. The instruction rule is we have to create the structured situation which they can practice the new behaviors. The instruction role is program instructions, which is change in observable behavior. And we have to know that mental processes did not play an important role to this behaviorism theory or instruction to this instruction role. We can use the well-structured instructional method for each unit in the learning processes. Behaviorism theories believe that knowledge exists independently and outside of people, or we call as students normally. For example, the student is in a blank state, which we have to give the experience for them to create behavior. If we see the learner role is the learner is passive, which is the learner is in a blank state before we give the information. So the knowledge exists independently in student, and the student have to wait for us to give the information, and they have to practice the information given in their new style or in their behavior. Learning was transferred by when a learning is presented correctly. Observation focused on the behaviors that can be measured. The learning process is based on objectively observable changes in behavior. The theory is that learning begins when a stimulus from the environment is shown, and the learner reacts to the stimulus with some types of response when one responds in an identical or similar fashion to stimuli other than the ones that were used in conditioning. At least some of the elements in the transfer setting must be similar to those one in conditioning setting for transfer to occur. We have the behaviorism set of structures, which is we have imitation, repetition, and practice. If we see in these three, under them we have reinforcements and punishment. For reinforcements, we as a teacher always have to give a reward or praise a student when they get a good results in exam, to make them learning effectively, and they get 100% what we teach to them. Compared to the student that we give no praise, we give no rewards to them when they achieve good results in exams, and the studies found that the students who get no reward and who get no praise when they pass the exam, they will show a least performances in exam, and they will show a least performances in studies. If we see in this incident, the motivation is an increase in the quantity or rate of behavior. No internal processes are used to explain motivation. The increase in quantity or rate can be explained in terms of reinforcement history. Certain schedules of reinforcement produce higher rate of responding than others. If we see, the motivations plays the crucial role in this theory. The increase in quantity or rate can be explained in terms of reinforcement history. Certain schedules of reinforcement produce higher rates of responding than others. What are the implications for instruction is practice is needed to strengthen responses. Complex skills can be established by shaping progressive small approximation to the desired behavior. Instruction should have clear, measurable objectives. Proceed in small steps, I believe, and deliver reinforcements. Mastery, learning, competency-based instruction, and contingency contracts are useful ways to promote learning. For example, when I teaching history subject in my class, when I tell the plot of the stories, The students will be more interesting if I use these behaviorism stories. When I use the actions to tell them stories, they can be more interested and focused on my stories, on my storytelling teaching method.